excused or announced absence of Chairperson O'Connor, who asked me to chair in his absence. So first action item is the Warm City projects. Can we get an update on that, Ken?
Yeah, in your packet, there's a list of all the projects that we have on our warm, set, and dry list. And typically in the past, we brought this list with updates every 6 months to this committee and then forward it to the board. Just to note the changes on here, those listed under the 12-13 column are complete. Almost all the 13-14 are complete. Some are still wrapping up this summer. 14-15 are 95% are underway. There's a few that are still in the investigation period, but we technically, that period runs from July 1st to next June 30th. So we've updated that column. We've added the first priority in 15-16. I haven't put numbers in there, but I put some asterisks on projects that we want to take a hard look at as priority projects. And then we've modified the 15-16 list and the 16-17. And then we know we're not going to get to everything, so we've started, for lack of a better term, it's called the TBD list of things that are further out. I don't want to lose them off the list just as we can't get to them. The one thing I do want to point out is a change to the 14-15 list on the last page. Under the material purchase section, we've added 2 line items, one for construction management and one for architectural engineering services. We have utilized those on a project-by-project basis. What we would like to do by adding these in is have a number identified that we can draw off from. I would really like to get a construction management firm on board this fall. We found that there were certain things that we thought we were in good shape in as far as bidding that we weren't with timing, and they have a better knowledge of the bidding market than we do. There were several things that we had to rebid because of market conditions that we weren't aware of, whether folks were busy, couldn't bid, whatever. It also help us with making sure our budgets are on track, that we aren't offline as we get into some of the things down the road, and making sure we're spending our money as prudently as possible. And I did include some numbers in the 14-15 year, so we can start spending against that. Typically, what's been asked for approval in the past is around $3.5 million worth of projects, and depending on what we get somewhere between 3.6 and 3.8 million a year with the warm, safe, and dry money. We try to leave a little flexibility there, just in case something happens, a roof blows off, something that we want a little funding available to take care of an emergency. So what we're asking for is your recommendation to the board for the 14-15, 15-16, 16-17 years as they're shown. And we will continue to bring project by project to the committee for approval.
A couple questions. First of all, well, I have a couple of other. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah. Okay. I'll go first if you don't mind, Mr. Ross. 3. First of all, we've got real money we're investing in Stockton, right? More than $1 million last year and 1.2 this year, and then that essentially is going to be wrapped up. Can you tell us where we are on that? How much of that money's been spent? Where that project is? And then I want to talk about the construction management question. Also, and then the third thing I wanted to ask about was, and this is really a question for finance, is it best practice to keep a contingency fund and warm, safe, dry money, or can we legally loan ourselves money from another pot if we had a contingent event and then draw the money out the next year to repay ourselves, or is that not permissible under the terms of warm, safe, dry? So, but that third question is maybe probably the least important. So, could you update us on the Stockton project?
Yeah, the Stocking project, and we split the funding between 12-13 and 13-14. That was to get the building back open and ready to go. That work that's shown is complete, except listed as the playground removal, maintenance, replacement. We are in the process of this summer of reconstructing the preschool playground, and then there are some site work pieces that will go with it. One we're going to do is fence off the back parking lot from the playground so we don't get cars overflowing in the play area. We are repairing the back, I guess it's the northeast corner ADA ramp, and we are constructing a second ADA ramp at the southwest door on the front side of the building. And that's where the students go up to the playground, and it will get those wheelchair-bound students directly to the playground. So we are 99% complete, save for that site work project.
The follow-up question I have on that is that's one of the few places where it doesn't look like we have real numbers in the 12-15 column, and they all round off to an exact $100,000, which means that they're placeholders, they're not actual numbers.
That's because it was part of a big contract that included all that.
Includes 13,
12, 13, so the round number is in 12 and the actual number is in 13. So between the 1.1 million in 12 and the 1.174968, those were all wrapped into one contract.
Right, but what that means then is the roof's not done yet, and so we don't know whether it's 200,000 or 196 or 201.
We didn't, it was all done as part of a general contract, so we didn't get that breakdown in it.
Got it. Oh, okay, thanks.
And then the one thing I should point out for the 15, 16 years, we do want to do some masonry repair in stock. There's some areas that need to be addressed.
I'll defer my next question, about project management until ask questions. So, Mr. Ross, you have something?
Yeah, I don't know what your question was in particular, but it was about the construction management and engineering services. I got the basic of what you're saying. I guess I just maybe wanted to, tease it out a little bit more. It sounds like you're saying that they're basically going to manage.
We would like, their exact scope would be to be determined project by project, but we'd like to bring them on board to help us with the project initiation and planning, as far as setting the schedule for when it needs to be bid. They would handle the bidding. Whether they would handle the project management is still, we would have to determine. There's probably a chance of that on some larger projects. Some of the things, this year we've got 80 contracts out, and it's really stretched us to stay on top of everything. So we're looking, my answer is yes and no, and it's to be worked out, but we would bring that, those contracts to you for approval.
Okay, so, and I guess that's my follow-up question. So at this point, you're interviewing general contractors. You're talking about a contract with the general contractor. Are you contemplating an hourly contract or a cost-plus contract? Where are we in that process?
Well, it would be a construction manager, and we would interview based on qualifications, but the fee would be set up, not hourly, but a percentage of each contract.
Okay.
We may have to divide that up based on contract size, so smaller ones are a different percent than larger.
Okay, and where are you in the process? Have you got any people? Have you got anybody identified, or this is just at the conceptual stage?
We haven't started it. We wanted approval. We'll do it after school starts. For construction managers, typically we have not advertised. We've sent notices out to the various construction managers we've used in the past that are local.
Good.
I think that this is part of sort of this concept of bringing on the Green Fellow and also having concerns, or some of the stuff we've explored on the Ad Hoc Sustainability Committee, where when you have a project, you really take in the long-term goals around the project. So I think a project manager makes a lot of sense. It looks like you're spending a lot of dollars initially, but you're saving in the long run, considering other contingencies that you hadn't perhaps thought of. Working in coordination with the Green Fellow we're going to bring on, using Alex Smart more dynamically. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and that's sort of the recommendation and the pathway with some of this green build concept too. So I think it makes a lot of sense that we can get these projects working well and not tie up a lot of people's time trying to track down somebody to fix that door again, kind of a thing. So I think it can be very interesting and helpful for the district in the long run to save money. Are we done talking about this?
No, I was asking if you had questions, so do
Yep,
you?
that was my, it wasn't necessarily a question as much as, this is part of the, long-term vision, I think, in terms of getting the district to be, dollar, wise, energy-wise, utilizing people. Obviously, I haven't been talking with the superintendent or Mr. Clomparents about this, but this is part of the strategy that we've been sort of talking about in the other committee.
Mr. Ross, you had-
So yeah, so forgive my ignorance then, but when you mentioned like an example about fixing the door, I guess I'm just not connecting something that minuscule to these requests for the kind of construction management and architecture services. So maybe filling those blanks.
That's true. Things that, the warm, safe, and dry, by definition for the use of the funds is capital improvement. So when we talk about fixing the door, that would fall under our maintenance budget, our maintenance team would handle that.
I meant more, like some of the grander door replacements we're doing at the pool,
But
larger.
By definition, this isn't maintenance, it's capital improvement.
Yeah.
The state's definition of maintenance is a little different than ours, but trying to follow their guidelines.
You-
Okay, and then my only last, I don't want to even say a concern, but you mentioned that these opportunities wouldn't be advertised, they would pretty much be an invitation to.
For the construction manager, it would be by invitation, and we would include everybody who we've used before, which is anybody of size and capability in town. For architects, engineers will be project specific, and we do have a list of pre-approved architects and engineers based on different disciplines, so if some specialize in certain things versus others, we would work off from that list. If we need to advertise, we would let you know on that. And we can reintroduce you to that list and who's on it. It's probably time to update it. We try to update it every few years anyway. So,
Oh, I would like
but
that.
they're typically, construction management is a little different than architect. Architect engineers will be project by project, so it's very specific expertise.
In terms of, I guess I have one ask, and that is, and I guess I got the answer to the warm, safe, and dry. Can we eliminate the contingency fund shake of the head from finance? So we can't roll things forward. We do have to keep a contingency.
Well, again, the warm, safe, and dry is a dedicated millage, so we cannot use any of those dollars for anything but these construction projects.
Understood, but can you shift them year to year? In other words, could we spend all of our money and then if a roof blows
Oh.
off, spend some of next year's money and pay ourselves back? Follow me?
You'd have to see it
It's
alone.
my understanding legally you can.
Yeah.
And conversely, we
Yes.
don't have to spend all the money
Yeah.
year by year if we wanted to save it for something
Right.
larger at the end. The one question we don't have is what happens at the end of 5 years? Is there a time limit to close it
Right.
out?
Is it like a healthcare saving account? You got to quick go to the dentist. Okay, got it. Then I guess what I'd ask Ken ideally is, I think it sounds like a good idea, and I'm happy to trust you on the idea, on the concept of getting a project manager on board because that's what general contractors do. It's their job to know availability of subs, know what the market is. That's the world they live in. And if you essentially are going to be overseeing somebody who we're hiring that's got that skill set, I think that's a smart way to spend our money. But if you could, after a year or so, get for this committee some kind of report out saying, okay, let's say 2 months from now or a month from now, we approve somebody and you say, you know, Pinnacle wants to do it at 5% of the project costs. If you can keep track in some form of where you think we've saved money or where you think it's facilitated projects, if we can have some report of your assessment of whether that was worth doing, just procedurally, so you can say, well, this left a bad taste in my mouth, things just cost more money and I could have done it myself looking back, and so I recommend we terminate it. Or, you know, it made this complex project possible and I don't think we could have coordinated subs and it got things in on time or more on time. You know, we were 30% of our projects were above budget and 2 months behind time before we hired these people. Now we're on time and on budget, and I think that's more than justified the 5%. Some kind of analysis ex post facto of whether you see it saving money and how, and whether you see it keeping projects on schedule and how. I think it'd be good to come back and evaluate, right? Because hoping something's going to work and checking to make sure it worked are two sides of the same coin, right?
And to be honest, my and we will do that certainly. My anticipation is not so much saving money as to making sure we're always in the best shape to save money. When we have to rebid something, well, we bid it and got the low bid, we don't know that rebidding, was there a better time to bid to get the lowest possible bid?
But that is saving money, right? So,
Right.
So I guess what I'm asking for is not a proof on a spreadsheet. What I'm looking for is a one-page memo, maybe with some anecdotes. Like on this project, I'm sure that we got a better situation with the plumber because, you know,
We can do that.
right,
Less
because we knew there was a
using-
plumber strike coming
reusing
up,
of staff.
and the general knew there's a plumber strike coming up, so he got our bid locked in before the strike or whatever, right? That'd be great. Okay, any other questions on the warm, safe, and dry?
I think bringing up playgrounds, and regarding the fence, for stocking, but, playgrounds in general, I know people have talked about, and I don't know, in the purview of the finance, committee, if this is necessarily it, but I think it is something that, comes up on occasion, is how can community interact well with the district, and have projects that they want to do. Playgrounds are always a sort of bone of contention, or a place where people don't understand to what level these playgrounds need to be safe, and that's much more a degree than their backyard. I know we've talked with Mr. Hemholt in regard to getting some sort of pamphlet going, helping people understand mobility, edges, access, ADA, so, you know, to get that ball rolling would be really great. You know, at what level, what thickness do we need wood chips around concrete surfaces? So people have a better understanding and can really do some planning about that. But I know that that's been sort of an ongoing wish list, and thought I would bring it up now, that it jarred my memory.
One thing I can say about playgrounds.
Yeah.
There's some playground work in the warm, safe, and dry, but it is limited. Rules within warm, safe, and dry playgrounds are pretty picky. We can remove equipment, we can install equipment, we can buy structures, which are the big sets. We cannot go buy a swing set or a slide. An individual piece is not eligible. I don't understand why, but those are the rules.
Right.
So we have, what's being done this year is a fair amount of moving of equipment from closed buildings where it's not utilized or can't be maintained properly to locations where it can be utilized. We also try to offer to principals, if you have things that we just don't have a good funding source.
Right.
Get with your parent group, and then we'll meet with them and work with them and work out options. Do they want to do a fundraiser? Would they like to leave it on our court to deal with? What is the best way, school by school, to move forward? There are certain things that we can do under our maintenance budget. The wood chips are actually a very specific item called FIBAR, which is much more expensive than what you and I would think of wood chips. But we try to work with the school group on what can we work out in the best interest of that building.
One other thought I'll maybe put in your mind, and I don't know if there's anything productive to be done here, but if, as we have empty buildings which have playgrounds, if they are community assets, maybe we ought to have a conversation with Friend of Parks about some kind of short-term contract with them, which would allow us to dispose of the buildings, sell them on a dime, but would have somebody as essentially a custodian of free neighborhood playgrounds, if that's what's gonna happen in a closed school situation. I mean, we all know all of the green space around schools and the playgrounds always wind up being community assets. So there may be ways for us to let those be community assets without them being ongoing costs for the school system. If we get an entity like Friends of Parks in the conversation. So that's not on the agenda, but it's just a thought.
Can I follow up
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the playground? No, what we have done in the past, we found most districts, when they close a school, will remove the playground for liability purposes. We have not done that until we've had a place to relocate equipment. But our liability is that we don't have someone there every day telling us when something's broken.
Of course, which is why I suggested a separate entity which would take ownership and liability. And I mean, of course, you don't want kids on a injuring themselves on a teeter-totter, and then we have a liability problem. I get it. Yeah. So, like I said, I think that'd be a conversation which would involve contracts and, essentially handing something off on almost a month-to-month tenant on the playground, and let Friends of Park be our playground tenant or something. I just think there's potentially room for that. Let's see, action items. Do we need to just receive this, or did you want approval of this?
Recommendation for the board to approve.
Okay, so I'll move that we recommend approving this forward to the board.
Support.
Or, I'm sorry, Chairman's not supposed to do that. Got a motion? Motion from Dr. Randalls. Support. All in favor?
So moved.
All right. Okay, on to purchases.
Limited purchasing agenda, it's in your packet there. Just ask the committee to approve this for the board, move it to the board level. A couple of big items there are tuition payments to ISD for students we had during the past year in a couple of their programs, and then a large 14-15 really maintenance supply replacement printer equipment. I think we may have mentioned in prior finance committee meeting. We are been actively and under Cheryl's direction here the last probably 6 months, actively looking at all our printers and copiers and realizing we just had overcapacity, and working with our vendor, Applied Imaging, have developed a program that will streamline that, better utilize that, take many printers and copiers that we don't need out of the district. And we estimate once all is said and done, we'll save somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple $100,000 a year.
Great.
By virtue of more efficient use of copiers, a different contract in terms of how we get charged for our copies. Again, getting the excess copiers and printers out of there. So that's the other big item there on the purchasing agenda.
Great. Any questions?
Yeah, a couple that I'm sure you don't probably have the answer to, but I'm just curious. The staff computer special ed, $37,000. I'm just wondering about how many machines are we talking? Just more curiosity.
How many machines, special ed? Computers, the Dell computers, number one.
I guess I'll tell you the reason I ask, and maybe it's I've noted my. The reason I ask is I'm just always maybe apprehensive about suppliers trying to gouge
Right. It's
governmental and
easy to buy $1,000 computer when there's a $100 one you could buy at Best Buy or something, right?
Yeah, again, we're on a regular program refreshing our technology, laptops. We've had a regular contract with Dell as being one of our major vendors. Just the last couple of months, I've looked at some of those things, and I guess from my perspective, we seem to be getting reasonable price for the laptops that we buy. And there's 3 or 4 different models that we buy, depending on particular needs of the individual. So,
well, if it's not too much, just probably my own personal need for satisfaction, I would be curious to know what those models are and how many we're getting. Just a small note. I don't know if anyone else cares, but just a small note to me. I'd be more comfortable.
We can get that info to you, Mr. Ross. I'll go back and send you a copy of
And with
the information.
and with the printers, so we're replacing pretty much some of the printers that we currently have, with the anticipation that the replacement printers will be more efficient and less costly in the long
Yeah,
run.
you know, we had frankly too many printers around, so as those contracts expire, we're taking them out of service. And there's a specific, I'm gonna use the word strategies for each building in terms of, you know, assess what their actual copy and printer needs are, and then strategically placing machines in the individual buildings, whether it's color, whether it's black and white, whether it's copier printers, those multi-use machines. So it's very much a collaborative effort with, as I mentioned, Applied Imaging, who done this many times before, and other clients, and have a plan to, and actually software that helps them manage the process too. So
the 400,000 is obviously some labor to some degree for Applied Image to actually do the swapping out, some upgrade from a current machine to another machine, and then I guess just their consultation of
supplies
sorts,
associated with that.
so forth, software, and
It's all
whatnot.
that.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, can I say something? Sorry.
No, sure.
The 400,000 isn't, anything going to apply. Right now, we're averaging
Close enough.
70, no. No, it's okay. We're averaging 75,000 a month to support printers within the district, whether it's color, black and white, whether we're supporting the LOOP program, pre-K, or an average classroom. Right now, 90% of our schools have a printer in every classroom. So what we're doing, and we started last week, and I'm hands-on with Applied in every location with them, we're taking the printers out of each classroom, and we're setting up centralized print locations for every 4 classrooms. Because it's expensive to support one piece of equipment in each classroom, where that one classroom might print 20 prints a month. Another one might print 4,000. So we're trying to get our hands on what they're actually printing, and if it's needed printing, because it's expensive. Right now, they're printing a lot of toner cartridges, the ink cartridges, and they average about 27 cents a page. We're reducing that down in a color to 14 cents on a laser print and 2 cents on a black and white. That also covers the replacement of equipment, and it covers maintenance on equipment and all supplies with that equipment. So on average, we're looking at a savings of 272,000, I think is what we're averaging the first year, which I'm hoping will increase more as we limit our numbers. We have to get an actual count on what's being used, and we just put in a software that's counting. And until I get the kids back in the classroom, I can't actually count. I can't get a good number. So hopefully by October, November, we'll have our mind wrapped around those numbers so we can move forward even more.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing that I think would be good to do, and there have been lots of studies on bending consumer behavior with information. You can reduce people's electric bills dramatically by telling them what their neighbors are doing. If you just tell people what their neighbors are doing, and if you're using more electricity, you say, gee, I should get my kids to shut the fridge. You don't have to go beat anybody over the head about it. If you could just send out some kind of email to all the teachers, tell them what the cost spread is between black and white and color. Probably it's not something people think about a lot, but if that becomes part of their decision-making process and they internalize that, that could turn out to save us money too. So I think that would be useful, just to inform people what the actual costs are of color, because I'm sure, in my house, if you get a website and you just print it, it comes out red, white, and blue, and it's got spangles all over it, and all I needed was the information. I didn't need it to be color. But I don't take the time always to select black and white when I don't care. So if we could internalize that down on a voluntary basis, it might help our costs too. But thanks for doing that. Now, I assume that also this means we're going more and more to wireless printers, right? That's one of the ways you're doing this. 10 years ago, you couldn't have done it, right? Everything had to be hardwired. Now you can just hit print from your laptop, and it appears, it spits out, just like in my house. I print it out in my bedroom and go down and pick it up in the kitchen. Yep. Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
Yeah, and follow up with the ad hoc sustainability committee, you know, printers should now sort of be double-sided, a default and a black and white, and where people have to select color in a single page, just to help build awareness, force awareness, and encourage minimizing costs for a district, paper, toner, everything, so I think it all makes
They're
sense.
automatically,
Good.
the new equipment that we're putting in automatically defaults to two-sided black and white. So they have to go in
Great.
and manually change all those parameters.
Great,
So, and most of them don't want to do that, so.
great, thanks.
Last question. So this overhaul, you spoke about the printers in classrooms. I'm assuming this also affects the larger copiers in the office areas and things of that nature too.
Yeah, we started that when Fred was still here 2 years ago, making sure that we're putting in one big centralized piece of equipment per school that they can fax to, they can print to, they can scan, so it meets all their needs, and it's at less, it's 0.00835 penny per page. So we've already started that. I've got a few more schools to do this year, give or take a little bit in the budget, but we should have that wrapped up in the next 2 years.
Great.
And also admin, I think that's where.
Yeah, we're not exempt of this bill.
No,
No,
no.
exactly, you
This-
guys are
I will
not
be
at all.
tackling this one
Yes,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, any other questions on purchases? Okay, motion?
So moved.
So moved what?
So moved to move the purchasing agenda to full committee. Full
Support?
board,
Support.
excuse me.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. So we did our warm, safe, and dry update as part of our action item. Moving then down to policy, and I don't know what policy means if it's not legislative or sustainability, but someone going to speak on that?
Nothing
No?
there. Yeah,
No reports?
no reports.
Okay. Legislative, John, anything you need to tell us?
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
The only legislative update would be, the legislature came back mid-July. They only meet one day in July, and they're maybe gonna meet one day in August. But one thing that the Senate Appropriations Committee did look at was a package of bills that's kind of the early warning financial emergency. Senate Bills 950 through 957. The committee did not take action. We were a little nervous that they were going to move it out to the floor, but the school lobby has really approached them and said these bills need a lot more work. Right now, it would put most of it under Department of Treasury as opposed to Department of Education, yet the Department of Education still has other reporting requirements that are already in place for schools that fall into that emergency management, or when they fall below that 5% fund balance threshold. And so they are now forming a summer work group that is going to apparently work on the package of bills. And what the legislature is looking at mostly is that they want to be notified and in advance when financial emergencies are pending among schools. What the legislature was saying is they felt surprised by things like Buena Vista. When that came up, the first time they heard about it was when it was basically shutting down. And this goes back to this kind of the legislature and the MDE don't necessarily get along very well, and MDE maybe hasn't done the most effective job communicating it, but that's an administrative role, not necessarily a policy or legislative role. But the legislature is now looking at putting into state law reporting requirements so that they would be informed in advance, and that the reporting would go largely through Treasury. So, other than that, the bills that we're continuing to track that potentially could see action this fall, but unlikely, the EAA legislation, the codification of EAA, third grade reading, and then the letter grading. Those are kind of three that are up in the air. But if anything, we anticipate possibly this school finance package will come out this fall. But it's the election season, and we don't anticipate anything very controversial. Most of this will wait till after the November election, and then the lame duck, we have a lot of things to keep an eye on. So that's it.
Thanks.
I have two. So who's in the group? Have they mentioned?
I don't have the names of who's in the group.
District friendly or?
Let me find out. I don't have a list. I was
That's
looking for
important
it.
to be aware
I'm
of.
not sure it's even been appointed yet, actually.
I'm sure they do.
me see if I can find it. But typically, it'll include Michigan Association of School Administrators, Michigan Association of School Board Representatives. It's the typical education lobby group that'll be included along with other representatives. But I'll find that out and I'll send it out to the board.
I have one other question. MEP, what, I mean, they're sort of winging it now, right?
Yeah, that's a good
And
way to
that's
put it.
coming
Yeah, you know, for years, the legislature was, the schools were gearing up for Smarter Balance. The Michigan Department of Education had selected Smarter Balance as the replacement for the MEP. The main reason for the replacement of the MEP was this shift to Common Core. And MEP is not aligned with Common Core there,
And
and
it's not a
Smarter
good
Balanced
test.
is.
Right.
And not really getting too deep into the politics of it, somewhere along the line, the anti-Common Core groups see the Smarter Balance as too closely aligned with Common Core, which is some way a negative, and therefore they put the brakes on it. Another great example where the MDE, which the department that is established to work on public education, was trumped by the legislature. And so we are now looking at a hybrid version of the MEP this spring. And I don't think they've even sent us the dates yet as to when that test will be administered. So here we are, a month before school starts, and we don't know what's happening by and large because, again, the legislature, and even to some lesser degree, MDE, are in the 11th hour making last-minute decisions that are those curveballs that create the churn, that challenge that we've had within the public school systems. So, anyway, just
So,
one,
an untested test,
that's right.
so to speak. And then I think the last thing I have was the question about our warm, safe, and dry funds, and whether we can spend past the 5 years. How can we find that out, I guess, from finance in terms of really nailing that down? Does all that money expire and taxpayers get it back if we don't use it all, or, you know, what happens?
We know we're getting collected. The question, and we have 2 years to go, but we'll get an answer on, is there a time constraint at the end of the collection that it must be used by? We'll find out and bring it back.
Great.
Okay, sustainability, anyone got any reports?
Yeah, don't you guys? I was hoping, possibly.
Do you want me to keep going on this one? All right. Give me just a second here and I'll.
Haven't I been the sustainability cheerleader here today, anyway?
All right, give me just a second. We do have news to report, and we will be sharing this. We're working on a press release right now with the U.S. Green Building Council, and Ken, you can probably speak a little bit more to it, but they went through a rigorous interview process, and after they narrowed it down to, I think it was the final 3, and that's, Ken, isn't that when you participated?
U.S. Green Building Council, and there were approximately 50 applications. They got down to 3. 2 of them were real local. One was an adjacent state, so the interviews were held on site here in Grand Rapids. And then out of that, their comment to me was that was the best set of candidates they'd ever seen. We came down to 2 that we stood out above the third, and then the one was selected, and John, as he said, is working on a press release with all the information of names and dates,
And I
which
can,
I don't have all that.
I'll share that, right. I mean, it's gonna be public. Kristen Trovillian is who was selected. She served as the energy specialist with the city of Indianapolis, their Office of Sustainability. Prior to that, she was the director of programs for the Indiana Office of Energy Development. And, you know, Ken, I don't know if there's any more you want to add about her and how she emerged.
She brings a lot to the table. She has a significant amount of experience, and that will directly apply to what we're looking for.
Great. And I guess dollars and cents, you know, 2 things to keep in the forefront. One is we've got to justify this salary with cost savings, right? So report out as we go along on things that have happened and how it saved the district money are going to be very useful. And the second is, I guess, is a subset of that first, which is if we can demonstrate that, then we can keep this position going. And we've got it funded for 3 years now, so we've got a good long endowed priming of the pump, but ultimately, we're gonna wanna demonstrate that this is somewhere we can keep driving costs down. And, you know, all of this renewable stuff is a moving target, and continues to be a moving target. I mean, petrochemicals are a stable technology. You light them, they burn, they produce energy. But alternative energy is something that's constantly shifting. So I'm sure we'll be able to not just get improvements in the next 3 years, but things will change in the 4th year, and the 5th year, and the 6th year that we'll be able to take advantage of. So that's great.
And there's a second component to the job besides sustainability and energy savings is education for our students. Working with our curriculum folks, with our teachers and principals, so that our students are aware of environmental issues, how it affects them at home and personally. So there's a whole nother component that is equally important as part of this.
Great. Okay. Any other agenda items? Anything anyone needs to add? All right.
Just wanted to comment about the policy thing. Sorry, I just throw that. Well, I think that it was added in now because we're looking to have our reporting mechanism regarding the energy policy, regarding some of the policies that we had recently passed. And so working with finance, and I think the actual chairperson, no offense, and getting the energy report, what that will look like. And maybe that will be part of superintendent goals kind of thing this year, I don't know. But, so just trying to get a report that helps us keep the district accountable for using money wisely.
Okay.
Now I'm done.
Meeting adjourned.
She called me Friday. Just hold it for one more day. Let me call her back. She called me on Friday and I just didn't take the call. Yeah.
Okay.
I will.
You'll see I sent an email to Dale Robertson, put you on there. If you wanna just reply to all and say, hey, you know, you guys had proposed 50, proposing 35.